in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and it is Monday, 5/22/17. You know, this is graduation season. I'm sure you bought gifts for your relatives who are graduating, close friends, etc. And Jordan Goodman is on with me now. We have another gift for you, and that is now that you've graduated or junior has graduated, and probably not with honors, probably middle of the pack like myself and so many of you out there, you've got tens of thousands, maybe even $100,000 in student loan debt. What are you going to do to pay it off so that you're not a debt slave for your entire life? We posted a Facebook picture recently. It was a picture of a guy probably in his early to mid 70s. He was taking a shot and he said, "I'm celebrating because today I finished paying off my student loans." Don't let that be you. But Jordan, here we are. And what are we going to do with this student loan debt? It's reached bubble epidemic proportions.
Yeah, it has. We're up to about 1.3 trillion, and the graduation season we're going through right now will add about 100 billion. So we'll be up to 1.4 trillion by the end of this year. The average graduate is graduating with 38,000 in student loan debt. That's the average. But as you said, there are people with 50, 100, 150,000 undergraduate loans. Then you add graduate school on top of that, law school, medical school, business school, 200, 300, 400,000 on top of that. And so people are just buried in debt before they even get their first jobs. This is not a good thing. And it is a bubble, but people keep taking it on. Now, the difference between this bubble and the housing bubble of 10 years or so ago is that the house still is there. And even though the people may have gone bankrupt or not paid their mortgage, the house could still be used by somebody else and rented and so on. You can't use somebody else's education. It's not a transferable asset as real estate is. And also, you can't discharge it as well. I mean, you can get foreclosed on and kind of leave a mortgage behind. But in 2005, the bankruptcy, was so-called the Debtor Abuse Prevention Act, the bankruptcy bill, said there are 2 debts that you cannot discharge in bankruptcy: IRS debt and student loan debt. So you could take it to the grave with you, Kerry, and still not get rid of the student loan debt. So it's an enormous problem for society.
Yeah, well, I remember, Jordan, the Bankruptcy Reform Act. What was it? You said 2006?
I think it was 2005, yeah.
2005 might have passed right close to 2006. So originally had nothing to do with student loans. They weren't mentioned in it. Nobody knew it had anything to do with it. So public loans made or guaranteed by the U.S. government have been non-dischargeable since Reagan. And if I remember, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but there was an issue with David Stockman, or one
Yes.
of Reagan's aides, who went bankrupt and basically voided all of his student loans. So
That's right.
Congress said, we can't let this happen again. No, this is a crime against humanity. And what happens next? They passed non-dischargeability of federal loans that the government makes direct and guarantees. Fast forward to 2005, and it started like in 2003, this reform movement. There's too much bankruptcy abuse. We have to stop it. There was never any mention, Jordan, that private loans from too big to fail banks would then be put into that elevated category.
That's right.
And the way they did it was so sneaky, because they said any loan that you can deduct the interest on, which evidently with student loans, you can deduct interest payments off your taxes, shall be construed to be non-dischargeable. So it never says anything about private loans made by too big to fail banks or otherwise. It's every college or student loan that can be deducted from income.
Correct. And that was the banks lobbied for that. And you're right. It didn't start that way at all. It was to so-called prevent all these abusive debtors who were getting rid of their debt in bankruptcy. But they said, this is our chance. So the banks went in there and got it. So the end result is you can't get rid of this, even in bankruptcy. It's the only 2 debts you can't. You can get rid of your mortgage. You can get rid of your credit card debt, all kinds of other things, medical debt.
There are others. For instance, fines. You can't discharge a fine. You can't discharge judgments resulting from intentional torts, like I assault you and you sue me, you get a judgment. There are protected debts, but there is no justification for private student loans to be non-dischargeable. There just isn't. It's strictly a giveaway to the banks. And you know what it does, Jordan, and you're fond of this, is gives incentives for careless, reckless lending.
Which is what we've had.
Yeah.
I mean, and exactly. So, I gave you the overall numbers, but lots of people are getting into debt and don't end up with a degree to be able to pay it back. Over 50% of the people who enter freshman year either never graduate at all or take at least 5 years, sometimes 6 years to graduate. And so they don't even have the degree to go out and earn their way out of this hole in many cases.
Yeah.
And it's because, what else are you going to give a 17 or 18-year-old, ice cream? But no, you can get him into tens of thousands of dollars of debt without him having any clue which direction he's going to go as far as his career.
And it's really bad. You know what's happening. It's really awful because Purdue University is merging or acquired
Kaplan, right?
Acquired Kaplan University, a private university. And what?
Well,
why would they do that? For profit. Yeah, right. For profit. Exactly.
Right.
What? What's going on there, Jordan? Why would they do such a thing? It's
it's profitable.
Yeah.
But it's because that these debts are not dischargeable as well.
Yeah,
that's why they can get away. So you're right. There's been a huge explosion of student loan debt, and I think it's going to go. People have been asking me what's going to be the solution. I think we're going to $2 trillion. I just don't see it flowing down the way things are going right now. Now there's about 20% of it that is currently either delinquent or defaulted. Now, when that happens to you, when you have a delinquency or default, the interest rate shoots up dramatically. It's not 6%, it's like 18%, all kinds of late fees, and they kill your credit. Your credit is really killed if you've got default or delinquents on your credit report.
For 18 months, yes.
Yeah, so that is really, really bad for a lot of people. And again, they can't discharge it. But let's talk about some solutions, Kerry. It's not only bad. There are some things people can do to make it a little bit better. Anyway, I can't magically make your student loan disappear.
Let me just tell you one story. A friend of mine, Don, and this was like 15, 20 years ago, he tells me, they just grabbed my income tax refund.
That's correct.
But he had graduated from college 20 years before. I think he owed $350 and they took like $1,800 from him. And they just, it's like.
They'll garnish your wages as well.
Death and tax.
They'll take anything and get their hands on.
Yeah, they'll even garnish Social Security income from parents who've guaranteed debt. But it is it used to be death and taxes. Now it's death, taxes, and student loans.
Exactly.
Right?
We have to expand it to the 3. Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk about a few solutions here. The first thing when you get out of school is you can consolidate. If you've got a whole bunch of federal loans at different interest rates all over the place, you can consolidate them into one at the lowest possible interest rate. There's a place called the Student Loan Help Center that'll help you do that. Their website, consolidatecollege.com. And even if you're being garnished or you've discharged or if you're late or delinquent, that kind of thing, they can still kind of help you. It's not easy, but there are ways to kind of get that out. And you can do that once. You have to kind of have all your student loan debt in a row. You consolidate once, and now instead of paying a whole bunch of them, you're paying one at a lower interest rate. And the other thing people can do, and they don't realize this, is they can actually refinance their student loan to typically in the 2 to 3% range. Now, the federal loans might be 5 or 6%, the parent loans 6 or 7%, private loans 8, 10%, much, much higher. So you can combine all that into one loan at a lower rate, typically in the 2 to 3% range, depending on your credit. A place for that is called Credible, Credible. So go to credible.com and then put /money answers. They know it's me that way, and you get $200 off your first payment. And it's not just one place. They've got a clearinghouse of about 6 or 7 different lenders who will refinance your student loans, and then you kind of have them compete to get you the best deal. And there you go. You now have one payment instead of many at a much lower interest rate. And again, your student loans are not going to magically disappear, but paying them off at 2 or 3 is going to be a lot faster than much higher rates.
Yeah, for sure. So if you've got that option, definitely take it. Understand, even when you default, the way FICO is set up, it's a measurement of your odds of defaulting on a debt or debts within the next 18 months. and they use a whole lot of analytics to come up with a FICO score. And once you've already defaulted, then in the next 18 months, your score gradually increases. And in fact, if you go bankrupt, it'll be on the report, but you have to understand, Jordan, it's not like when I came up through the ranks and we had TRW, that was the big credit reporting agency, where you actually had to read the report to understand what it meant. Now with the FICO score, it was designed so that loan analysts didn't have to read the report.
It's instant.
They don't care about it for the most part. All they care about is, did you default in the past 18 months? And that's why that score is so subject and easily manipulated, why credit repair companies can fix stuff if you're persistent enough and you get it removed. So you want to do the refis when your score is on the upswing, not when it's on the down.
If you've defaulted or you're delinquent in your student loans, that is not a time to apply for credit cards or do a mortgage or anything else, because it's going to really be bad. That really takes a big hit on your credit score. I mean, there's a bigger question about all this, is that how are we allocating our money towards the educational system, and are we getting the results we really should be with all these literally hundreds of billions of dollars we're putting into student loans? And I think there's a huge mismatch going on here. You have all these people graduating, in many cases with not particularly marketable skills. Some of them don't even know what they want to do with their life. They've been drinking beer the whole time. That's nice. And then you also, at the same time, have a huge amount of jobs that are open that nobody in the country is qualified to take. The Labor Department puts out what's called the JOLTS report, which is the job openings report. And the latest one was 5.5 million jobs that are open. And they're technical skills. They might be computer scientists. They might be tool and die makers, electricians, plumbers. There's a huge shortage of people taking those jobs. A lot of the people in those jobs have been baby boomers that are now starting to retire, and there's nobody around trained to take these jobs. So there's some massive mismatch here of all these highly indebted people without marketable skills. At the same time, we have a huge shortage of people who are skilled to take the jobs that actually exist. And it's going to be even more so if President Trump gets through an infrastructure bill. Everybody's saying, who's going to make all this stuff? Who can build these roads and bridges? We don't have the people to do construction now. So that's a kind of a societal problem as well.
Yeah, well, we have a associate called Manufacturing Talk Radio. In manufacturing, Jordan, the biggest problem is they can't find enough qualified people. And a welder starting off who just went through the program, whatever the apprenticeship program, is good for $70,000 a year, which is way higher than you're going to get for your advanced basket weaving degree or puppetry degree from some state university in Podunk. Like going to college and actually graduating, it used to be reserved for a very select portion of society. And I think it's good that it was broadened enough so that more people who really can profit by it. But I've said this before, Jordan, maybe we should start a business where before you sign on the dotted line and start sucking from the student loan spigot, you should be required to get counseling on financial counseling. And people who are in their 60s, 70s who want to get a reverse mortgage, who were smart enough to buy a house, they got to get counseled before they can take a reverse mortgage. But this is a reverse mortgage on your life, a student loan, unless you move out of the country.
And nobody has an interest in telling you no, right? Your college counselor, I mean, their record is how many people go to college. The schools themselves, they don't care what happens after you get out of there. They just want you to pay the tuition now. And the lenders, everybody has an interest in making sure that these teenagers get tens of thousands of dollars in debt. I mean, the solution is if they were saving money up front, there are these 529 plans and other ways to save, which would be nice. Some people do some, but nothing close to what you need when you get there. There are now 150 colleges charging over $60,000 a year. And some are actually getting into the $70,000 a year undergraduate level as well. So it's just staggering for people. And you're putting these decisions in the hands of people who are not able to make them, 17 and 18-year-olds who barely know how to balance a checkbook, never mind sign on for tens of thousands of dollars in student loans.
You can safely say that very few of them know how to balance a checkbook. Right? Very few. Financial literacy.
Not only the kids, but then the parents also do, the Parent Plus loans. And they not only max it on student loans, but they take out 401k loans against their 401ks, home equity loans against their home equity, life insurance loans, whatever's not, tack down, they'll borrow again.
And there's a disconnect here in perception versus reality, because people say, well, all these factory jobs have disappeared, and the only way that you can comfortably join the middle class is by going to college. But the fact of the matter is, like you said, the JOLTS index, and then when you look closer, you see baby boomers who made up the remaining factory jobs, which are on the upswing, by the way, partly due to Trump. These people are retiring at the rate of 10,000 per day, Jordan. So that's right. 10,000 manufacturing jobs, or a good chunk of them. Let's say it's 4,000 manufacturing jobs a day that become open, times 5, or actually times 7. That's 30,000 manufacturing jobs a week opening up. Yeah. Why should you go to college? I mean,
so people should be going to technical schools or community colleges or learning these skills, apprenticeships. I mean, there are ways to do it where you can have really well-paid jobs. You may have to work with your hands, but that's like a good thing. That should be downplayed as a horrible thing to actually work with your hands these days. Yeah. So the whole system is, and we're wasting all this money on these people who are getting jobs that, as you say, basket weaving or something that's not really going to be marketable, while you have this big shortage in the manufacturing. So if some politician could figure that out and get people actually trained for the jobs that exist, this would be good for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It's really, really insane what we're seeing now. And you just look, it's going to end badly for the people involved and the country. They're going to have to repudiate this debt because it will never get paid. Obama, through executive orders, started chipping away at it, Jordan, but he didn't quite get there.
I don't think Trump would repudiate the debt, though. I mean, Bernie Sanders wanted to make it, free, and that had a lot of traction. People love that idea. And that there are some things happening at the state level. For example, in New York State, they have recently passed a bill that New York State residents under $100,000 adjusted gross income can get either 2 or 4 year free tuition at state schools as long as they stay in the state for 4 years afterwards to pay it off. Right. And some other states, Tennessee, I think some others are doing that as well, because it's really becoming a political issue because it's getting so outrageous, the amount of debt people are taking on.
Yeah, well, in New York, making $100,000 a year is not like making $100,000 a year in Utah.
So. Right. Right. And they're going to move it up over time. But I'm just saying there is a political will now to help this. But I mean, you become a prisoner of your state. You can't leave the state if you take the money. Right. So I guess it's kind of a golden parachute for kids, or golden handcuffs in this case.
Yeah, I think it's a really bad situation that's getting worse. Nobody's addressing it, and that's what's really bad, Jordan, is that we're just in a collective state of denial over this. There are people like you and I and others sounding the clarion call, but as usual, we will be ignored, and you'll go to a used college student lot and buy a college student the way things are going now.
By the way, I did a book on this, if that helps some of your listeners, called The Ultimate Guide to Student Loans, which they can get at Amazon, theultimateguidetostudentloans.com. So there are some solutions, and the solution is to invest upfront so you don't have to borrow a lot. And pay them off as quickly as possible. But this is a big societal problem. At least the two of us are on the same page here.
Yeah, and you can do things also like don't go to a 4-year college after you graduate. Go to the community college. I think they don't call them that anymore. In Florida, it's now Palm Beach State. It used to be Palm Beach Community College, Broward Community College. Now it's Broward State. But it's still a community college, and they're just trying to make it more prestigious, probably so they can charge more money. But what you do is, and in college, in high school, before you even get to college, you take these advanced placement courses if you're smart enough to get into them, because you get college credit for them, and it directly gets deducted from the number of credits that you have to earn
and hopefully graduate. Getting skills that are actually useful as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So you go to your community college, and the credits that you get at the community college have to be accepted by the state universities in that state. They're automatically certified. So when you transfer, so what you do is you overload credits at the community college level, because they might only be $50, $75, $100 a credit. You get 10, 15 extra credits there. And then you go into the 4-year program at a state college, and automatically you're ahead of the 8 ball. You're only going to have to pay for if you need 128 credits and you manage to pick up 70 at the 2-year college, then you only need less than half there, 58 credits, just pulling numbers out. It used to be 128
You won't have to go into the debt that you would if you started freshman year in the 4-year school, correct?
Yeah, but there's still the debt because of the opportunity cost of going to college, and it's your, presumably you're not going to have a full-time job, although probably more and more of you do now, but you will not be able to work, and your living cost. A lot of you are borrowing for spring break. There was an article, like 35% of the kids out there had used their student loan debt to pay for spring break trip to Cancun or South Beach, to pay for gambling, alcohol. I mean, all the important things in life here. They're going into hock because it's like I'll pay it back later, but eventually later becomes now. And then what do you do?
You're paying for your your spring break for 30 years. I hope you had a really good time, because that's a lot of interest on your alcohol and drug orgies.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what they had here at South Beach. So, that's the other thing. Like, let's be honest here about college, is that it really does reinforce a lot of negative behaviors like binge drinking, like casual sexual hookups, and hazing in fraternities. A lot of bad things. And
political intolerance, I will add as well. Oh,
yeah, not the least of which, especially if you're at places like Middlebury and Berkeley, right?
Right.
Then anything, if open war on conservatives, anything goes here, Jordan,
Yeah, and this is what we're paying tens of thousands of dollars in interest for. So the whole system is out of whack, and hopefully at least we've raised the flag, and maybe some people will listen to us.
Hey, one other thing that's absurd. I'm paying for my kids' college, but because of privacy laws, they don't have to send me the stupid kids' grades.
Right.
How do you figure that one out? Like, that's breaking the parent bond. So the kid's 18. That doesn't mean that he or you're ready to take on the world and, be self-sufficient. You're on my dime. I want to see your damn grades. And yet I can't force the college to send them to me.
That's right. It's kind of like the HIPAA laws for college these days.
Yeah.
Privacy is more important than the person paying the bill. There's not a lot of consumer products you'd buy and have no idea how you're doing with it.
Yeah, well, boy, this is pretty insane, though. I mean, how did we get here, and how do we get out? Because college is not for everyone, just like homeownership is not for everyone, right?
And I think some people are making that decision. And I mean, people who in the past would have gone to a private school for $60,000 plus are saying maybe that's not a particularly good use of money, and they're going to public schools. And so you're seeing the level of quality at public schools rising because people are there who in the past wouldn't have been there or would have gone to private schools. So there's a lot of private colleges that are really hurting these days. The very top and the Ivy League and so on who have big endowments, they're doing just fine. They've got huge numbers of applicants. But there's a whole kind of middle swath of colleges that don't have big endowments, that are not having enough. And what they're doing, they're making up the difference with foreign people, a lot of people from China and India, because there's not enough domestic people who want to pay these high tuitions. That's another area you're going to have. And they just don't have the endowments. They've got huge buildings and huge infrastructure to keep up. It's what I call the edifice complex. And it's hard to keep up if you don't have big endowments, which a lot of schools do not.
Well, that's going to change anyway with the internet. We know it. Right now, the colleges, the universities have the lock on the accreditation process. So it's very difficult for online providers to get there, low-cost online providers of university level education. But that is going to change, and it's going to change big, and it's going to crush many of these marginal schools.
Correct.
Because accreditation equals limited entry and limited
I don't think it matters. I mean, there are these online, like Coursera and Udacity are two of the bigger ones, and you get a perfectly good education there. And in many cases, people don't need full degrees. They just want to know that you have the skills.
Yeah.
And you can get them online cheaply on your own time. Okay, so you don't have spring break orgies, but
that's a real loss.
That's not really particularly of an appeal to employers, right?
Yeah.
So that the whole online world of education, Khan Academy, all these kind of things that are happening are a direct threat to a lot of colleges out there. You're right.
Yep. And it's going to happen sooner than anyone thinks because a trend continues in motion until it stops. And this one will stop much sooner than anybody ever believed possible. And without any warning and without any consideration for the current beneficiaries of a very corrupt system. Anyway, Jordan, it's always great having you on.
All right, very good. Thank you, Kerry. Appreciate it.
Where do we find you?
Moneyanswers.com is my website. I get emails from you folks all the time and glad to help them. Moneyanswers.com.
Great. And if you have any questions, comments, this interview, or any others for Jordan, myself, just send an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Our Twitter feed, which we will try to address more frequently, is @KerryLutz. And the Facebook page is Financial Survival Network, where you can see that picture of that guy who just paid off his student loans. Jordan, always a pleasure. We will
Very good. Thanks again, Kerry.
We'll talk again real soon.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.